to be with you guys. And of course, it's unfortunate that we cannot meet face to face and really discuss the topics. But yeah, this is the way we live these days, and I'm pretty sure you get used to Zoom and these conferences. But there is one thing about getting used to, and the other about liking it and being and being willing to continue. But it looks like this is gonna stay with us for quite some time, and I don't know the entire details about the situation in Italy right now. I mean, I know the general facts, but in Poland the situation is pretty bad, and today we're expecting like 50,000 cases of COVID, which is gonna be peak of the peaks. And to cover this, Polish government has done this week something really terrible, and I will comment on that through the lecture. But it looks like the situation is going to stay with us for quite some time. So also, as Marco said, I'm still teaching at university, and I just realized that all my lectures this semester in Iceland will be most probably 99% fully on Zoom. So it also, for those of you who teach, who has experience in like academia, they know that it means a total refurnishment of the idea of a lesson, of a lecture, because it's not very easy to keep people focused online for such a long time, as there are so many distractions. Also, for this presentation that I'm gonna run for you, I know that you also maybe losing your focus because it's all online, and I encourage you, if you have any questions during the presentation, just please, maybe I have the chat window open, so if you just type word question or a letter Q, and then I can stop and take any questions during the lecture, so that we can have it as interactively as this platform allows. And also, of course, after the entire presentation, there will be time for questions and discussions, and I think this is going to be the best part of it. I have a little presentation for you, which is mostly pictures. There is of course some text too, but there's many pictures, because so that you get the feeling what I'm talking about. And let me share this presentation right now. Okay. I guess I need to be an admin or whatever it's called here to be able to share the presentation, right? Because I cannot see the bottom here.
Yeah, in a few seconds,
Sure.
You'll be the manager.
Sure, perfect. Perfect. So maybe so the presentation will be in general about populism, or populism in Poland in particular, and we'll talk about populism from two specific angles, that are important to me, that I focus on, and which is the rule of law, and is also hate speech. These two are maybe at the first glance not so much connected, but really they are. They are very much connected, and especially they are connected as they are two very important tools of populists, including the Polish right-wing populists, to promote their idea and to change the state into something that is becoming like a quasi-authoritarian state that is disrespecting the rule of law, that is disrespecting very basic rights of the people, and once again, as we saw this week, is disrespecting the very crucial right for a big part of the population, women rights, which are also, of course, human rights. And oh yeah, I can see the share screen bottom now. Okay, but no, just a second. Sorry for that. Okay, I cannot really share this this presentation I have. Okay, here it is. Can you see the presentation? Fantastic.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So just to give you a short introduction how it all started, because I think this is crucial to understand the entire situation if it comes to the rule of law and hate speech and everything that is going on right now in Poland with the populist government. It's important to know just a bit of history, which is between 2007 and 2015. We had 8 years of a government, mostly of Donald Tusk, but then for the last year of Eva Kopacz, who was Donald Tusk's successor in the party. So basically, it was 8 years of the center-right government of the PO, which stands for Civic Platform, which is the biggest Polish currently opposition party belonging to the EPP, so the Christian Democrats, and PSL, which is the Polish People's Party, the traditional farmers' party, also belonging to EPP. So Donald Tusk was the first prime minister in Polish history after the democratic revolution of 1989 that managed to win re-election. So he was a prime minister for almost 8 years, breaking all records, because before the prime ministers were changing, every 4 years with the election cycle, or even more frequently during the term of the parliament. So Donald Tusk was the prime minister, and Poland was seen back then as a pretty successful country on the European stage. We were very close to the let's say European table, so-called, so to the most important capitals. Poland was seen as a very much as a success story of a transition, of a democratic transition, of a liberal capitalistic transition, a country that had 25 years of unstopped economic development, that was improving its state institutions. There was also a very visible social development if it comes to civil activism. So pretty much a success story, but not everybody was on board. And for 8 years, we could see in the political debate polarization. The polarization that started already in 2007. When Civic Platform got into power, and that was going deeper and deeper through the years. And Poland became divided between two big ideological camps. So one was back then the one connected to the government of Donald Tusk, with Donald Tusk himself being a symbol of this camp, being a symbol of this center modern country. And the other one was Jarosław Kaczyński, so leader of PiS, Law and Justice Party. Polish right-wing party. A very interesting fact, maybe for those of you who are not following so closely Polish politics, is that both PiS and PO, so Law and Justice and Civic Platform, they came from the same root. And in 2005, when they were campaigning, when both parties just appeared on the Polish political scene, in the campaign, they were both campaigning to create a new government. That was their idea. They were saying, they're campaigning against the old parties, and they were both created and say, we are running now in these elections, but after that we will create a common government, which did not happen because Law and Justice, PiS, won the elections unexpectedly. Everybody thought it was going to be Civic Platform to win, but Law and Justice won and decided to create the 2015 government with the far right and with agrarian populists. So everything changed, and this polarization really started. So we had 8 years with Donald Tusk, and then in 2015 something really unexpected happened. So we had presidential elections, and only a few months before these elections, only days before the campaign started, everybody was absolutely sure that incumbent President Bronisław Komorowski, who represented 5 years before in the election Civic Platform, would win, easily, because he had really good support rates, like around 80% of Polish people were supporting him, and according to all the polls, he was winning even in the first round. So PiS, knowing that probably that they did not have much chances, they presented Andrzej Duda, really unknown lawyer and member of the European Parliament, as their candidate. And then the campaign showed something that we did not expect. So Andrzej Duda ran a really powerful, super enthusiastic, and super energetic campaign. He was all over campaigning for his life. And Bronisław Komorowski and his team were not really doing anything. They just believed that they had huge support and they don't have to do anything to win. And at the end of the day, we woke up in May, as far as I remember, it was May, and Andrzej Duda got 51.5%, and Bronisław Komorowski lost with 48% of the vote. So we knew that the big change is coming back then, and the elections for the parliament were supposed to be only a few months after these elections. And so they were. And something really unexpected also happened. So for the first time after 1989, one party, meaning Law and Justice, Peace, won a full majority in the lower chamber of Polish parliament. They got 235 out of 460 seats, which gave them a majority. And they did not need a coalition partner, which was something that has never happened before. What was the reason for that? A few. I will explain you the more, let's say, campaign political reasons in a few seconds. But here it's very important to say that a very, very big fault in this result had the left, let's say the social democratic parties, as they were three of them, two very new ones. Okay, let's say one new one and two who were presented in previous parliament, and they could not agree to run with a common list. So they decided to run on two lists, one coalition list, and in Poland coalitions, they need 8% to pass the 8% threshold, and the very new radical left party called Together decided to run by itself and needed to pass the 5% threshold. None of them passed the threshold. So the coalition got 7.6, I think, or 7.8, so very, very close to the threshold, and the radical left got 3.5. In total, around 2 million votes were wasted because these people got no representation in the parliament, and because of the Polish electoral system and the system that promotes the biggest parties. Basically, the seats that the left could get in the parliament were won by the Law and Justice. So Law and Justice got the full majority in the parliament. And before I continue with Law and Justice and its consequences of these elections, I would like to just mention one thing very important to me, because in 2015 we had two newcomers to Polish politics. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see Paweł Kukiz, a former rock star who created his movement Kukiz 15. And which was a typical anti-establishment movement with basically no clear agenda whatsoever, beyond being anti-establishment, beyond criticizing everything that the state represents. Paweł Kukiz himself, he got 20% in the first round of the presidential elections, and on this wave, he built his movement to the parliament. He got almost 10% and introduced a very significant number of MPs to the parliament. As you can see, they were 42, and but they were not coherent at all. They are really from left to right, from ultra libertarians to ultra nationalistics, almost like neo-fascists, people from all over. So this group, this party basically split. And then on the right hand side, you have actually my party, the Liberal Party. So we were created in 2015, only 5 months before the elections. Basically, we were created because we saw that civic platform is not going to win these elections at all. And we saw that people who we know, who had been voting for civic platform for many years, they said, enough, it's enough. After 8 years, civic platform is not representing liberal ideas anymore. They are really not having any plan for the country, any agenda. So we have to, so they decided to stay home. They said there is nobody who is representing us. So this is why we created Nowoczesna, which is the name of the party, which means the modern party, to give the representation to the people who really believe in liberal values, who did not want to vote for civic platform, which basically had no stand on anything. Because the difference between the civic platform and us was that if you ask a difficult question to civic platform back then, they would never have an answer, and I believe they still don't. Like if you ask them, what do you think about the joining the euro, they would say, maybe one day. and we will say, yes, we want the euro, like, as soon as possible. If you ask them about what do you have about the liberalization of the abortion law, they would say, we have a compromise, let's not talk about it. And we will say, yes, this is the woman's choice, and so on and so forth. And we scored over 1 million of the Polish votes, and we entered to the parliament, being the first liberal party, like, with a self-recognition as a liberal movement in the parliament in years, and we kind of reshaped the political scene in that term of the parliament. But the question is, what is really peace, and like what happened in these Polish elections? And also, to understand what peace is and understand the consequences, we need to know, or like I would like to stress, that peace in the campaign of 2015 was a very different party than the campaign after the party won the elections. So in the campaign, peace presented itself as a very moderate conservative party, clearly a conservative party, clearly catering to the voters on the right. But Polish society is pretty conservative itself. Polish society in general is still very much connected to the church, the Catholic Church, connected to the conservative ideas. So even like the center parties, they're slightly conservative, and even a big part of Polish nominally social democratic parties, they're pretty conservative themselves, because this is the Polish society. So peace in 2015 presented itself as a conservative party, very social. This was important. So they presented themselves as a social instead of a liberal party. So in 2015, they said that Poland right now is a battleground between the liberals and the people who support social, or solidarity. And they were representing the social part. And the symbol of it was, the logo is here, is the Family 500 Plus program. So peace promised to give 500 Polish zlotys, which is like 120 euros, to every family with a child. So it's 150 euros per child per family every month. And this was something that Polish people has never seen or has never experienced before, that somebody promised them cash. Many people did not believe this is true. The opposition, the liberal opposition, back then the government, they say this is not possible. But the government said, this is what we promise, 100 euro in cash per child in a family. So if you have 3 children, you get like 360, which in Poland is a significant amount of money. And basically this 500 plus was the main topic of the campaign. The other one was the anti-migration rhetoric, because it was 2015, and I believe I do not have to comment to the Italian colleagues what was 2015, and if it comes to migration and the rhetorics in migration. Also, they presented themselves as a party of doers. They were saying everybody else was just telling you words. We will do stuff. We will change stuff. And also they said no Pole left behind. And I believe personally this was really the key issue next to the social promises, is that they use the same rhetoric as Donald Trump. So there is a clear connection between the populists worldwide. They said, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, no matter what education level you have, no matter if you go to the church every day, no matter if you're a stadium football hooligan, you belong to the Polish community. And maybe for many years, this other camp, the liberals, were telling you that you don't belong because you are worse. We say you belong. We say you are as good as anybody else. And we want your values to be our values. So they kind of give this feeling of dignity to people who felt left behind, who were from smaller towns, whose views were radical or definitely, or maybe not acceptable by the elites. And they said, this is okay. Maybe you're slightly racist, okay. Maybe you don't like Jews, that's okay. And so they gave this feeling of belonging to big parts of the Polish society, and this was important. They mobilized many peoples with them. And after the elections, we realized that peace is actually something very, very different, and that this is a revolutionist party. The party that has a revolutionist ideas, and Jarosław Kaczyński had those since the beginning, since the early 90s, when he became active on the Polish political stage. That this is a party that is ultra-conservative, not moderate conservative, but ultra-conservative, proposing the most radical social conservative ideas that are there in the spectrum of the European politics. That is a party that is ultra-nationalistic, party that believes that sovereignty and nation are the key notions in politics, both internally and externally, and a party that is definitely anti-European. So a party that is saying that that the European Union, it's okay as long as it is a union of sovereign states, as long as it is economic union that is not interfering anyhow in the political agenda of national government. So just maybe summing it up and getting closer to the rule of law. In 2015, we realized that everything is in one pocket. So the guy on the right here is, of course, Jarosław Kaczyński, the leader of the peace camp, and the two faces on the left is President Andrzej Duda and back then Prime Minister Beata Szydło. Both these guys on the left, they basically, if you want to be rude or not so politically correct, you'd call them puppets maybe, or marionettes of Jarosław Kaczyński. They did everything he wanted. He was the man who was ruling the country. He was the man, who first time after the Polish Revolution of '89 had the majority in the lower chamber, the majority in the Senate. He had his own prime minister, all cabinet. He has his own president, and he was ready to run his revolution. A revolution which was supposed to be a moral revolution that was supposed to replace all the elites. This is one of the ideas of Jarosław Kaczyński, something that he's really driven by, is to replace all the elites with the new elites. So he believes that elites we are having still in Poland, or that we've had for the last 25 years, they're like post-communist elites. They're people who do not deserve to be there everywhere, in politics, in academia, in culture. There are people who are not truly Poles, so they must be replaced. So he had all the institutions to run his big revolutionary plan, and but he didn't have one thing. He didn't have the third branch. So he had the full control over the legislative and executive branch, but he didn't have any control over the judicial system, right? Because this is not something you win in the European case in the elections. So this is just a little scheme of the Polish judicial system, so that you know in the moment what we're talking about. So basically, the Polish judicial system, the so-called the general one, the universal one, is headed by the Supreme Court, and then there is a separate branch of the administrative courts, and then kind of on the side we have two tribunals, which is the Constitutional Tribunal, which is responsible for interpreting the Constitution and saying if any law is if any law is constitutional or not. And there is a tribunal of the state, which is the the special court for politicians, the politicians in office like prime ministers, ministers, in case if they committed any crime or they're suspected to commit crimes. So this is where we are, and Jarosław Kaczyński knew that, and Jarosław Kaczyński knew that he cannot complete his revolution without having control over the judicial system. And yeah, so because just a one side note, one little break, because when I see my presentation, I cannot see the chat, or at least I don't know how to do it. So just Marco, because I can see you in my window, please, if you see that there are any questions, just let me know, okay? Maybe just wave or something, and then I will stop. Perfect. So this is the judicial system and how they started. So now we are going to the juicy parts, especially if you are really interested in the rule of law, or if you are lawyers. So they started with the Constitutional Court, so the most political of the courts, and they introduced an amendment that gave the parliament the right to choose replacements of 5 Constitutional Court judges. So the thing was that the previous parliament, still dominated by the Civic Platform, choose 5 new Constitutional Court judges, and PiS did not accept it, and Andrzej Duda did not swear them in, and instead PiS majority decided to choose their own 5 new judges in 2015. So a big battleground started because Andrzej Duda swore them in, but the head of the Constitutional Court refused back then to acknowledge the new appointments, saying that they are illegal. and not allowed to participate in judgments. So, you know, really what happened, we had, instead of 5 additional judges, we had 10, because we had 5 elected legally, constitutionally by the previous term, by the previous parliament, and 5 elected illegally and sworn in by the new president. So we had 5 elected illegally sworn in and 5 elected legally but not sworn in. So so it was, this is how all this craziness, all this madness in Polish constitutional court started. But because the president of the court did not want to accept them, did not want to give them right to sit in the bench. PiS introduced a new legislation that could allow to remove the head of constitutional tribunal, but the tribunal rejected it as unconstitutional. So again, we had this ping pong, this table tennis, when the ball was going from one side to another. The parliament was saying one thing, and then the constitutional court saying, okay, this is unconstitutional. And really, for me, trained as a lawyer, for the first time in my life, I thought, okay, I live in a country and I'm hopeless. Because before, if you're a citizen, and I think even more when you are a lawyer, you think, okay, we are in the rule of law, the law is the solution. It maybe if we have some turbulences, this is just temporarily, because the court will decide, and we'll be okay. There is the constitutional court, there is the Supreme Court, we will be okay. But not anymore, not really anymore, because we had a government that did not respect the law, that does not respect the constitution. What is more, the law of promulgation. So you need to, when you have any law, any bill, it must be published officially in the official gazette, and which is also the same with the rulings of the Constitutional Tribunal. So the Constitutional Tribunal was giving rulings, and the government was not publishing in the official gazette. And this is the Prime Minister's job to do that. So it was months or years that the most important rulings were not published. So basically, they were not binding according to the law. And then the President Duda signed legislation that forced the head of the Constitutional Tribunal to include these 5 judges by the PiS-controlled parliament in decision making. So basically, at the end of the day, all the judges, the president of the court, they lost the battle, and the new judges were kind of accepted to the court because of the new legislation. And this brought us for the first clash with the EU, still with the Vice Presidents Franz Timmermans, and the European Union launched an unprecedented inquiry under the new rule of law framework into whether Poland's government has breached the EU's democratic standards by taking greater control by the judiciary and public media. Public media is a separate case. I will maybe comment on it later when we have time. But yeah, it was the first time when this new rule of law framework was used, and Poland was examined if the rule of law in Poland can be still observed. December 2016. This is still like our little calendar. The term, but this is a very important moment in this whole conflict. So the term of the president of the Constitutional Tribunal, Professor Andrzej Rzepliński, expired, and Andrzej Duda appointed one of these 5 illegally nominated judges, Julia Przyłębska, as a new chief of the constitutional government. And of course, as you understand, this is important on so many levels, because now they had their president of the court, of the tribunal, and now they can really do whatever they want. And who is Julia Przyłębska? This is also herself. This is a very important case and shows us how populists work in the legal system. Julia Przyłębska was a judge in one of the lower courts in the city of Poznań. She's been trying for many years to get promoted to the appeal court, but she never managed, because her peer review was always negative. She was a mediocre, or worse than that, judge who could not really get promoted from the lowest court level to the higher one, because her judgments were really reviewed and appealed so many times that she just could not deliver. And this shows us, this is actually a pattern that shows us how populists work with courts and judges, because they've been doing it so many times in next months and years. They were promoting judges who were frustrated and who were less than mediocre to the highest positions in the courts. They were promoting people who wanted to be with them whatsoever, because they knew that there is no way they could get promoted, they could get the highest jobs because of their competences and because of their knowledge and experience. The only way for them to get promoted was to get close and, you know, to be faithful to the ruling party. So judges who were breaking all the rules of an independent judge, judges who were just selling themselves to a party. And here with Julia Przyłębska, there is one additional interesting fact, is that she is a wife of the Polish ambassador to Germany. So basically, you know, a very important, a Polish ambassador to Germany, like Germany being so important to Poland, and Germany politics being so important to peace, as peace is super Germanophobic. So she's a wife of one of the key politicians / diplomats connected to the party. And also a fun fact is that she spends more time in Berlin with her husband than in Warsaw. So even though they promised that under her the court will be more efficient, all the data shows that the court is basically not efficient at all. And even though there is not many institutions in Poland who are referring their cases to this court, because people don't see it as a court anymore, but as a political body who will decide whatever peace wants, even though there is less cases, the cases are not reviewed smoothly because of this very, very weak leadership. And just an important thing here is that Polish people did not accept this this thing easily, and we had mass street protests that Poland had not seen, you know, since the late 80s, when we had the democratic transition. We had protests every weekend in all big cities, and Warsaw was a scene of marches of hundreds of thousands of people every weekend. And it was very, back then, encouraging, because we saw this mobilization against this power. We really learned as Polish people how to get united against this oppressive regime one more time, and how to protest going on the streets, because for 25 years we got very comfortable without staying home and without the will of mass protests. And here I would like to say this one thing which is very important to me, and I just, you know, added this slide yesterday because I found it super crucial. This slide is about what happens when a court is so party connected, and when the rule of law is not observed anymore, and when the court is just an executive branch of a party. So, you know, in 2015, when we were protesting against these reforms, we were telling to our friends, to our family members, this is not about some courts. Many Polish people, most of Polish people, I would say, did not know what the Constitutional Tribunal was, because this is not the court that any regular citizen, you know, gets in touch with. None of us. My mother, my father, my sister, my friends, they would never ever go to the Constitutional Court, because this is a high political court that decides on a very important matter, not matters of average Joe, so to say. But we said since the beginning, but at the end of the day, this court is going to decide about your rights. This court is going to decide about if the rights you are written in your constitution will still belong to you. And, you know, not everybody thought it's true, not everybody thought it's important to act. But last Thursday, we saw why it was so important. So on Thursday, Polish Constitutional Tribunal, pushed by the government and by the church, ruled that abortion will be effectively banned in Poland. So basically, they said that the abortion in case of a fetal defection will be illegal. And since already Poland has a very limited rights to abortions, one of the most conservative in Europe, and with this ruling, they will eliminate 98% of the cases of abortion in Poland, because 98% of the cases of abortion in Poland were connected to this fetus, this fetus conditions, and what it means? It means that Polish abortion will be pushed even more to the underground, and only women who can afford will have abortion. Because in Poland today, we have around 1,100, so 1,100 legal abortions in the country. But this statistics tells us nothing, because most of the abortions are done in the underground or abroad. Because for women with resources, it's very easy to cross the border with the Czech Republic or with Germany and get legal abortion there, or pay to the same doctor who cannot do it legally in a clinic in Warsaw, Krakow, or whatever, but they pay and they go after hours, and of course the abortion is executed. But right now, women will basically, after this decision of the fully politicized court, will lose their right to legal abortion in Poland. And last night we had demonstrations in all Polish cities, from the biggest one to the smallest one. In Warsaw, there were thousands of people marching to the Jarosław Kaczyński house, then to the Prime Minister's office, then to the main seat of the Catholic Church, because people is very angry, and for the first time, people see how important Constitutional Tribunal is for their rights, and we see that this protest will last at least until next week, because many of them, they're announced already. Now, maybe a bit more faster is the second thing that happened in this rule of law battle was the National Council of the Judiciary. So National Council of the Judiciary is a body in the Polish system rooted in the constitution that is responsible for all the appointments of judges, from the lowest courts to the highest court. And on the left-hand side, you can see so there is this graph, infographics on the slide. I'm sorry, it's in Polish. On the left-hand side, you can see how it was before. The white dots with the word sędzia, meaning judge, were basically members of the council appointed by the judges themselves. The blue ones are appointed by the blue ones, and the green ones are appointed by politicians. So before, it was basically the courts who were the representatives of judges who were appointing members to this body, and after the changes with the new law, it's the parliament. So right now, PiS has the full majority in the National Council of the Judiciary. So they elect the members, and the members who then appoint and decide who will be a judge or who will be promoted or not. So after this, we had even more protests, because here it was more easy to understand for the people that, okay, now we're talking about normal judges, about the judges in the court that we have our court cases with. And we try to explain to the people that, listen, on this reform will depend if maybe one day you will go to a court and you will fight this easy case about, I don't know, the money with your business partner, but your business partner is better connected to PiS than you are, and who will win if the judge will be appointed by PiS too? And I know it's extreme situation, and I know it's not going to happen now, but it may happen. We're giving also examples about divorces. If you want to divorce your husband who is PiS member, and the judge is also got his job because he was connected to PiS, who will get the custody of our children? The choice was easy. So even more people protested because it was more tangible for the people. Then we had, after this big protest, Andrzej Duda, the president, he decided not to sign the law proposal, the law bill by the government. But then a few weeks later, he signed even a more, I would say, radical proposal, giving even more power for the justice minister to hire and fire heads of courts of general jurisdiction. So he stopped this reform for a moment, but a few moments later, he signed a law that gave even more power to the justice minister to fire and hire whomever he wants to be on top of the courts. And now it has big consequences in the Polish justice system, because these heads, they have power, administrative power over courts, and also power to punish many of the judges who they do not like. And after that, the European Commission launched an infringement procedure against Poland over this legislation, giving this minister core control over judges. So they said, this is a clear breach over the rule of law. This is the clear breach over the separation of powers, because right now you have a justice minister who infringes the work of independent judges and independent courts in a way that it really threats the independent courts and threats the independence of the judicial system as such. Also in 2017, we had the change of a prime minister. So the ex-banker Mateusz Morawiecki was replaced Beata Szydło, and he was seen as this more European figure, as somebody who is maybe even more moderate, somebody who will be able to present Poland's position, a softer position in Brussels, but nothing like that happened. Mateusz Morawiecki was also fully dependent on Jarosław Kaczyński's will, and the EU launched an action against Poland under Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty. What Article 7 is an enforcement mechanism for Article 2 of the same treaty. And what Article 2 states is that respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. These values are common to the member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and equality between women and men prevail. So basically, this Article 7 is supposed to protect the Article 2, and Article 2 states all the basic values of the European Union, including the respect for the rule of law and justice. And the European Commission said that Poland may be breaching this Article 2, so the procedure of the control started, and this process could or can still theoretically lead to Poland losing its voting rights in the Council, but the process is still going on. In July 2018, the European Commission opened legal case against Poland over changes to the Supreme Court in the European Court of Justice. So basically, when the European Parliament could not do much, only resolutions, when the European Commission was stuck with this Article 7, which is highly difficult to execute because the anonymity is needed, and there is Hungary who would always protect Poland, but also a few other countries that may. The European Commission decided to go to the European Court of Justice over the changes in the Supreme Court. And what were the changes in the Supreme Court? So there was a new legislation that's saying that about a third of Supreme Court judges are due to retire unless granted an extension by President Duda, including the court president Małgorzata Gersdorf. So Law and Justice, PiS, looked at Hungary, which has been very often the case, because maybe a little side note, everything that was going on in Hungary was then repeated in Poland, with a big difference that Viktor Orban in Hungary had the constitutional majority in the parliament, and PiS did not. So PiS was making constitutional changes in Poland without changing the constitution itself, because they didn't have the majority. All these changes, if it comes to the law, were basically the rule of law, the justice system, were changes of the constitutions, were breaching the constitution. And they did all the changes with normal laws, with regular acts, not with changing the constitutions. And something that Viktor Orban did in Hungary was to, he introduced this law to retire all judges who were older than, I don't know in Hungary, to be honest, 75, let's say. And with this simple trick, he could promote and he could hire many of new judges. And the same trick Law and Justice tried in Poland, they left this little door open so that a judge could ask for a permission of the president and still keep on working. And this was also about the Małgorzata Gersdorf, the first president of the Polish Constitutional Court, who was a very firm defendant of the court's independency, of the rule of law, and of the separation of power. So she was clearly seen as an anti-PiS figure, a very strong one, a powerful one. So this was also the reason why PiS wanted to kick her out from the court using this legislation. And the commission, after this legislation, asked the Luxembourg court to determine if Poland government has violated the principle of judicial independence with this law. In October 2018, the European Court of Justice ordered that Poland has to immediately suspend the application of this law. It was an interim measure to respond to the European Commission request, and final ruling was still to be issued later. And finally, in November 2019, so a year ago, ECJ ruled that the changes proposed by PiS, the ruling majority, constitute a breach of EU law. So we have a ruling of the European Court of Justice saying that these changes in the Polish legislation are breach of the EU law. And there is one more breach to be mentioned here: the disciplinary chamber. So PiS introduced also the so-called muzzle law to further frighten the disciplinary liability system. So they created this new disciplinary chamber, excuse me, in the Supreme Court that was created only to punish judges who question government judicial reforms. So this new chamber was created, and it was a new chamber in the court. So it was fully. Now you can see all the consequences. So a new chamber was created, and this chamber was fully packed by judges appointed by whom? By the newly created Council of Justice. So they created the council to appoint the judges, then to pack this new chamber in the court with their own people. And they created this new chamber basically to discipline the judges, to see who is doing what against the government, including who questions the judicial reforms. So you could be punished, including kicked out of the judges, kicked out of the judicial position for questioning the reforms of the law and justice in the system. And why this new chamber is also politically important? Because this chamber was giving the power to approve the election results. And this year we had presidential elections, very difficult ones, because in the time of COVID, elections that were cancelled were supposed to be held on May 10th, but they were cancelled 2 days before the vote by the government, because they said, okay, we cannot do it, because most of the partners in the cities, they decided that they did not want to cooperate in organization of the elections in the times of COVID back then, when we did not know what really COVID is. So they had to cancel 2 days before the elections, and then they were repeated in June. Andrzej Duda won with a very thin margin. There was only 400,000 votes of a difference between Andrzej Duda and the opposition candidate. Both of them, they got over 10 million votes. Absolutely impressive result for both of them. Huge mobilization of the electorate. And there were many protests against these elections, saying that they were not fair because of many reasons. Because mostly the entire state apparatus supported Andrzej Duda. PiS used all the money the state had. All the state agencies, all the ministries were campaigning for Andrzej Duda. And what's super important, the public TV, that became a propaganda tube of the government, campaigned for Andrzej Duda 24/7, using all the tools, all the programs to support Andrzej Duda. This is why many people protested, saying these elections were not fair. These elections should be questioned. But the disciplinary chamber, of course, approved the elections. Now we go to 2020. And the ECJ said in 2020, in April, that the Polish government must immediately suspend the functioning of the disciplinary chamber, so already before the elections. Also, the Supreme Court itself, so all the judges expect the disciplinary chamber judges, they issued a declaration that the disciplinary chamber is not court. So we had ECJ and Polish Supreme Court saying both that this new chamber is fully politicized and is not court. Excuse me. The ECJ said that this new chamber undermines the judicial independence of Polish judges and does not ensure the necessary guarantees to protect judges from political control. Yeah, I think it's self-explanatory. And but this chamber still exists. This chamber still exists because Poland, Polish state right now under PiS, does not really care about anything that comes from the European Union or anything that comes from the Supreme Court. So if they don't control it, they don't care about it. And as the European Union has not many enforcement powers, there is not much that can be done. Of course, we're having discussions about connecting the budget with the rule of law and so on and so forth, but so far nothing is happening, and in my opinion nothing will happen, because it's not only Poland that the EU has problems, and the EU in general, so the biggest players like Berlin and Paris, they need Polish support with many other projects. So the deal will be right now that the EU will not really act forcefully against the Polish government. One last change, I think, in this calendarium is that on April 30th this year, Professor Małgorzata Gersdorf's term ended, so the president of the Supreme Court's term ended. and she was replaced by Małgorzata Manowska, another lady. And fun fact about Małgorzata Manowska, the new president, is that she was a deputy minister under the current Minister of Justice. So, here you have a picture of two good friends, the current Minister of Justice, who is the most hardcore right-winger in this government, who is all about starting an ideological war against all minorities, women, LGBT, and who is using his prosecutor office to persecute all his political enemies. And his deputy became the Supreme Court's president. So this is where we are right now with the Polish court. The important thing to stress is that PiS still do not have the majority in the Supreme Court. It will take them time. Still, most of the judges in the Supreme Court are, like, I would say, real judges appointed in a good procedure before. Of course, they have political views, many of them, and of course, you can say that some of them are conservative, and maybe even some of them voted for PiS. But it does not matter. They were appointed in a legal constitutional procedure, and they have been promoted in a long chain of a peer review procedure that eventually found them a seat in the highest court of Poland. Małgorzata Manowska, she was promoted to become to the Supreme Court as a regular judge already with a fully politicized procedure by the new council, and then she was given the job of the Chief Justice only because she was a deputy minister connected to the super powerful Justice Minister. Consequences? I mean, there are many, of course. Like, we could say about consequences already in Poland, but like there's many consequences more and more on the international stage. So in Ireland, in the Netherlands, and there's more and more cases when national judges in these countries question Polish rule of law, question Polish court system and its independence. They are saying, okay, Polish courts are not independent. We will not send this. For example, in Ireland, a drug trafficker. The Irish court said that this drug trafficker from Poland will not be sent back to Poland because he will not most probably get a fair trial because they don't trust Polish justice system anymore. And this will have huge consequences in the future. And this will have as many consequences for us in Poland, but also for you in Italy. Because Polish justice system does not exist in a vacuum. This is a part of the European system, and if many of your friends, your family members who run their businesses, or again who get married or something, they may get in touch with the Polish justice system because we are all Europeans, right? And Europe is connected, and we do travel, we do businesses all over, and maybe some of Italian citizens will experience what it means to be judged by a political judge in the near future. In the European Union, all the legal systems are connected, and if one is rotten, all the system becomes rotten. So it's all it's our responsibility as lawyers, as European citizens, also to do something about the Polish rule of law, to push our governments, to push our civil society not to forget about these changes done in Poland. Because without that, we will all suffer, the entire European Union and its legal system would suffer. Poland and Hungary were pointed out in the 2020 EU report of the rule of law. So there's this new EU rule of law review procedure, and then there is this new report that the first one was launched a few weeks ago, and Poland and Hungary are clearly shown as the worst countries if it comes to the rule of law. The responses were very harsh, like especially from Hungary. Many terrible words were directed towards Vera Jourova, so the European Justice Commissioner who launched this report. But also, which is a bit funny, but also a bit tragic, Poland and Hungary together, they established a Rule of Law Institute, and they said that now this Polish-Hungarian Rule of Law Institute will also measure how the rule of law standards are met in other EU countries. One last thing here with the rule of law, I want to mention, important thing is that until September 9th, we had one last independent constitutional body in Poland, which was the Ombudsman. Adam Bodnar was the ombudsman. He was elected by the previous term. He was, in my opinion, one of the best ombudsmen we've had ever. Hyperactive, protecting all minorities, very, very active whenever the human rights were breached in Poland. But his term ended on September 9th. There was only one candidate to replace him, which was launched, who applied officially, and who was supported by over 1,000 Polish NGOs. But she was rejected by PiS. But PiS did not really gave any counter proposal in the deadline. So this is the reason why they had to reject her, probably to start the procedure from the beginning, and now they will propose somebody. But also, to elect an ombudsman in Poland, you need to have excuse me, majority in both chambers, and PiS lost the majority in the Senate last year. So there's rumors that PiS will introduce a new law introducing an institution of an acting ombudsman. And the acting ombudsman will be probably elected only by the lower chamber, where PiS has the majority, and the acting ombudsman will be acting as ombudsman for next years. Okay, I had some case studies, but since it's pretty late, I will just go directly to this short presentation also on hate speech, which is a big case in Poland, and something that me and my foundation we work a lot. And so first of all, legally speaking, in Poland, hate speech is not a crime from the penal code. Basically, there is this incitement to hatred and a public insult, which are these two, let's say, proxy articles in the penal code that we are using to punish for hate speech. Me and my party, we've been lobbying for long to introduce a new hate speech law so that there is a clear hate speech regulation in the penal code. But of course, the government is very much against it. The government is very much against examining and looking at hate speech itself. They know that many of their supporters, they're actually active promoters of hate speech, so it's definitely not in their political interest to ban and punish for hate speech. After PiS was elected, after 2015, we had many attacks on foreigners. I would like to remind you that 2015 was this migration crisis, and the Polish campaign year, double campaign year. So this migration card was played by PiS. We had attacks in many Polish cities. We had anti-Muslim marches in Polish cities, which is ridiculous on so many levels. In Poland, we had probably less than 10,000 Muslim people in the entire country. And if it comes to the refugees from Middle East, from the quota, of course, we did not accept anybody. So the number of migrants and of refugees is extremely low. So all this paranoia is just created by PiS. It's just in media. It's not in real life. These people are not there, and if they are, they run their small businesses who are widely visited by the same people who protest against them. So we have people who go for anti-Muslim marches, and then they go for their local kebab, and they're perfectly fine with it. And this is the only contact with a Muslim person they've had probably in their lives. Universities ask foreign students to stay home during the far-right marches, and we had more and more attacks on LGBT organizations already kind of directly after elections, which also brings me to a comparative conclusion about what populists do with the language and hate speech and hate crimes. I just recently read a very interesting analysis from the US from post Trump's victory in the recent elections, and the number of hate crimes and attacks that happened directly after he was elected, just in weeks after he was elected. We had the same thing in Poland. The language brings crime. Prosecutors or police are not anymore interested in hate crime. I mean, not the people themselves who work there, because there's, of course, many excellent and very good-willing and fantastically working prosecutors and policemen, and many of them, they still work on hate speech, even though this is not the will of their superiors. But their superior, especially the Minister of Justice that I showed you before, is not interested. He's not even interested in excuse me, in reporting. So we have, for example, here some numbers to compare from 2011 and 15. You see that the changes were dramatic, from 300 to 1100, but we don't have any freshest data because the government decided not to report on number of hate speech anymore. They just put this number into some other more general numbers because they're not interested in knowing that, and they know that the number of hate speech and hate speech crimes is growing. Peace MPs are like publicly laughing and telling racist comments. This is probably something that you also know from your own country, because I believe that some of your MPs and even political leaders are also using the language which is not, let's say, acceptable. Also, in 2015, back then Prime Minister Beata Szydło decided to cancel this council that was dealing with hate speech, and NGOs and the ombudsman were protesting. The ombudsman was also writing to the Minister of Justice, who is also the general prosecutor, to do something about this. Yeah, so Beata Szydło abolished the Anti-Indiscrimination Council. Like, imagine that. In a country that the number of hate speech cases is tripling in a few years, the Prime Minister abolishes a council, which was only an advisory body to a Prime Minister, with experts, with people from police, from prosecutor, with psychologists to give advice on what to do with hate speech. And this is here, I just wanted to show you this, the most terrifying quotation from that year, from the election campaign of 2015, when Jarosław Kaczyński talked about refugees spreading diseases. So this is something that really resembles the darkest times of the 20th century, and it really resembles, to me, the darkest and the most terrible happenings that happened on the Polish land, on the Polish soil, 80 years ago, and that were inspired by the ideology that compared some people to animals, to insects. And this is something that happens in Poland kind of officially. It's done by the highest members of the government in front of cameras. One very important thing if it comes to hate speech and its results that I believe many of you heard about was the murder of Paweł Adamovich, mayor of Gdansk, who was murdered live on stage during the biggest Polish charity event. He was stabbed by a mentally ill person who was before sentenced, who was in prison. And it was clearly it was a crime committed by a mentally unstable person, this is for sure. But also it was, for me, clearly a hate crime. The guy, when he was killing mayor of Gdansk, a very popular liberal mayor, he was saying stuff against the political party that Paweł Adamovich represented. And also what some people reported is that this guy, when he was in prison, he had access only to this public TV, to public TV, which is a propaganda tube of peace, public TV that produced so many hateful materials about this murdered guy, saying that he is a thief, that he is a terrible person. So it did not have a direct effect, I believe, but in my opinion, it definitely could have a very strong indirect effect on that terrible hate crime that shook Poland. Unfortunately, not for too long, because the hate speech is back. In 2019, the campaigns we had to the European Parliament and to the Parliament was all about LGBT issues. PiS decided cynically to use sexual minorities, to run all their campaign about. They decided to polarize cynically the society and to create LGBT people as the enemies of the state, as the enemies of the nation. And they were labeled just like that. LGBT people were labeled and are still called, most recently, for example, by the Minister of Education, as not normal people. LGBT families are called not normal families. Government members, they say that LGBT people should not have the same rights as other people. And this one of the government-sponsored magazines, weekly magazines, produce these stickers that are visible on this presentation, on the slide, saying LGBT-free zone. And they wanted to give for free the stickers to newspapers, but it was banned by the court as promoting hatred and being, basically a crime according to the Polish criminal code. But more recently, maybe you heard that a bunch of Polish municipalities, counties, and regions declared themselves as LGBT-free zones. They accepted, approved declarations against LGBT people, and which provoked some I mean, lots of discussion, of course, in the country, but also some answers on the European level. Like right now, this week, I'm also coordinating an action together with a Renew Europe Committee of Regions group, who are writing letters to all these mayors of little towns, of counties, to do something about it. They offer them help. They offer them to show them their best examples from their own communities, how to fight against hate speech and how to build like a tolerant society, instead of just, you know, like shaming and blaming them. And yeah, Hate Stop. So the question is, what next? Hate Stop is the campaign that my foundation runs for many years, about removing hate from internet, but also hateful graffitis from the walls of Polish cities. But this is a huge question, right? Like how should we proceed with removing hate speech from the public debate? Because hate speech, in my opinion, is really something that kills public debate. It's something that is fully against. It's not. It's impossible to connect with a liberal democracy. It's something that is influencing our political system, and parties that are populist, that are right-wing populists, but sometimes also left-wing populists. They use hate speech to win elections. They use hate speech to divide the society, and they build the gap that is going to be so difficult to bridge, to build bridges, because the gap is becoming deeper and deeper, and hate speech always leads to hate crimes. It's not that, of course, all hate speech cases have again direct consequences in hate crimes, but every hate crime is based in hate speech, and it's always like that. And okay, I think I've talked a lot, and I'm sorry for that if it was too long, and I hope we can have some discussion right now. Thank you so much for listening.
Milosz, thank you so much for your very clear speech. Now, if some participants has some questions, any question, any remarks, any observation, you are absolutely free. So please don't be shy if you have some questions. I have a question for you. My question is, you never mentioned the prosecutors.
Yeah.
Are prosecutors independent as judges, or are they under the wing of government?
Prosecutors are not independent at all, and they are seen as a part of the government. And especially after the reform we had some years ago, and it was done by peace, the prosecutor general is the Minister of Justice now. This is the same person. So the Minister of Justice is also the chief prosecutor, and he gives his orders to all prosecutors he can. So prosecutors are definitely not independent. They are part of the apparatus. And right now, under this government, this apparatus, prosecution, is very widely used in political agenda. Very recently, last 2 weeks ago, prosecutor entered and arrested, with the police, and they arrested at 5:30 a.m. a very well-known lawyer who is a lawyer of the opposition. But fun fact, some years ago he was the deputy prime minister and the leader of a far-right party. But his evolution politically was pretty long. But right now he's a lawyer working with the opposition, and the government arrested him at 5:30 using the prosecutor. He lost his conscience. He went to hospital, and then when he was brought to the court 2 days later, and the court saw the materials the prosecution had, they realized that this is. I want to say it's funny, but it was not even funny. He was just arrested to be arrested. Like they had absolutely nothing on him. They had the numbers they were showing, because he was still supposed to be prosecuted for some malversation in the company. Like the court said, this is a joke. Like you do not even understand the numbers. You do not understand the documents you are showing. And he was released immediately and apologized. But this just shows how the prosecution today is used. It's used as a political tool, and the Peace Party sees it as one of the branches of the party.
And another power that you never mentioned is the press. What about the press?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention the press, but then I thought that I talked too much, and I skipped this part. Media is one of the pieces in this jigsaw that the government is doing. They understood that they need media to control the state, to control the people, and to win elections, and they've done a few things. So first of all, with the very beautiful slogans on their mouth about pluralism, because they've been saying there had been no pluralism in media in this country. All the media are liberal, are leftist. There was nothing for right-wingers, which is clearly not true. And so they said, we are taking over the public media. And they changed public media, so Polish TV, all channels, especially the TVP Info, which is the news channel of the public TV. They changed it into a propaganda tube of the government. But when I'm saying it, I don't think you can imagine what happened to that. It looks like Polish communist TV from the 80s without any exaggeration. This is not just a metaphor. When you watch the flagship news program, which millions still watch at 7:30 p.m., it's always the same. It's this lady who is saying, government is doing amazing job. Opposition sucks. Opposition steals. Every single material, it's with the same pattern, saying how great the government is with words like that. There is no nuances. They're just saying government is great. The prime minister is so smart. Jarosław Kaczyński, the greatest leader in the history. They're using words like that, and then they comment on the opposition. Opposition wants to sell the country to Germans. Opposition wants to sell the country to the European Union. Opposition, is working so that the Jewish people will get their property from before the war back. There is anti-Semitism there. There is homophobia there, and there is this aggressive propaganda that I'm 35, so I basically know the communist TV from YouTube when I watch the old movies, and it's like that, and it's really like that. But like my parents, when they watch it, they really cannot believe what happened to their Polish public TV has never been objective, has never been super objective. Always you could see shades of who was in charge. If it was a left-wing government, you can always say that there was some leaning towards the left. It was the right, but it was never an aggressive and permanent propaganda like that really resembles of Poland in the 80s. And what the TV did in this campaign of Andrzej Duda, when they knew that it's super tight, when they knew that we had a great candidate who was able to win, they were, during the TV news, this 30-minute long TV news shows, like first of all, of course, they're showing only the people from Andrzej Duda team, from PiS, showing them as great leaders. They were talking, how to say it nicely, they were talking really nasty words about our candidate. And in last week, they were playing 5-minute long materials about Andrzej Duda. Imagine you were watching the news, and now between the information about Donald Trump and about the EU summit, you have this 5-minute long clip for the president, which is part of the news, when you have Polish flag waving, people saying, we love our president, he's changing the country, like North Korea, seriously. And this is everywhere in the Polish public TV now. Experts they are inviting to the studio, they are only experts from niche right-wing magazines that PiS normally sponsors. There is no pluralism whatsoever. If you have like political talk shows, normally you have one person from the opposition, let's say one from my party, then you have one from the government, so PiS, one from one senator from PiS, and one representative of the PiS majority, plus the journalist, who is also basically like a PiS member. So it's all like all people attacking one person in the most nasty way ever. So yeah, and this public TV is available for all people around the country. 30% of people has access only to public TV because it's free. And this comes especially to the countryside. So they influence the countryside with having this control over public TV. So this is one thing. The other thing I would like to mention here is the support of the government for private media. During 8 years when PiS was in opposition, they created a network of private newspapers, magazines, TV stations, internet platforms. They were all super niche because they were already like party pamphlets, not like independent media. And now all these niche magazines, they have full support of the state. So they get millions from advertisements, from Polish oil and gas company, Polish mining companies, all the state-owned companies, they pump millions of euros, and all the ministries, they put their advertisements to this media. So they really grow in terms of budgets. They don't grow in terms of professionalism or anything like that. And the people from this media are right now the only experts in public TV. So this is like this is spinning. They are just feeding each other. And we still in Poland have a media pluralism. Absolutely. We still have, in total, there's 3 big TV companies. One is public TV, which is fully PiS, but then there is 2 big private ones. One is Polish, which is like kind of trying to balance between PiS and opposition, because it's owned by the Polish businessman who needs to still do business in Poland, and like he's also into 5G, and so he cannot really smash the government. And then there is the private TVN, which is the biggest private TV owned by American Discovery, and this is definitely very much pro-opposition, very liberal, left liberal, and what it is said that the government wants to do in this term after the Andrzej Duda won, they are rumored to have this repolonization law of the media. What would repolonization mean? It would mean that the government would buy much of the private media. They would force private groups to sell pieces of sell their pieces. Like how? Like in Hungary. So they can force them to say, for example, excuse me, a TV cannot own a newspaper, or if you are a newspaper nationwide, you cannot own internet portal. So they will split, and some of the pieces that will be now had to be sold, they will be sold to big Polish companies, again, like Orlen, so the biggest Eastern European Central European oil and gas company, or this natural gas company. So we have in Poland huge companies, right? Like huge banks that are state-owned, and they have cash to buy media, because this is what government wants. There is one big problem here, why this may not materialize, and why it has not materialized so far. And it's not the European Union, it's the US. It's the US who, because as I told you, the biggest public TV is American-owned, is Discovery Group, and the ambassador in the Polish American ambassador to Warsaw has protested so many times when PiS was trying to punish in anyhow this public TV for not being in favor of the government's policy. So since the US is very important to Poland, since Donald Trump especially is very important to this government, because it's like the only international leader who still meets Polish authorities and treats them with, let's say, officially with respect and honor, they are not willing to probably to sacrifice this contacts. But yes, they will definitely try to do something to buy more media. And for example, the biggest group, most 90% of Polish local and regional newspapers are foreign owned, mostly by Swiss and German groups, and this is something that they may try to do, kind of to harm the German business, not the American one. And maybe they will say, okay, if you have a regional newspaper, you cannot have more than 2 that sells more than 200,000 or something like that. So I believe that they will be looking for tricks to buy some TVs, some newspapers, some radio, maybe not so much, because this is kind of easy and cheap to start. But one more time, I'd like to say that in Poland we have still pretty big pluralism of media. You can buy newspapers which are from left to right in any kiosk. You have TVs which are different. You have radio stations who are extremely liberal or extremely conservative, so all over.
So thank you for your reply, very comprehensive. Are there some questions for Milosz? Okay, maybe you were very comprehensive in your speech. So what I understood basically from your speech is that, quoting Montesquieu, that democracy is a matter of balance among powers. And really thank you for your very motivational speech. You're really a great person, a great friend, and a great liberal. So thank you so much. And a tutti gli amici della Scuola di Liberalismo do appuntamento a sabato prossimo per il prossimo appuntamento. Grazie di nuovo a tutti e buon sabato. Have a nice Saturday.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.